I choked on water. That's not... Sorry.
Hey!
Hello!
Hi!
Welcome back to the Hypocritics podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Alex.
I'm your other co-host, Josiah.
And we freaking fired Joel.
Yeah, he was... Listen, we knew him too much, we knew him too well.
Yeah.
Him being our boss as a host was just... made us kind of uncomfortable,
Yeah.
so...
I did not like the mechanics of that relationship.
Yeah, so it was too much. We had to
So,
let him go.
he's never going to come back ever.
Never.
Never going to talk about music again.
Nope, never. But what we are going to talk about is we haven't done a movie yet, have we?
We haven't done any films yet.
Yep. So this is our first film. We're covering the movie Her, directed by Spike Jonze. I don't know if I pronounced that name right, but...
Spike Jonze or maybe Spike Jones?
Jones, maybe?
I don't...
We're going to go
That's
with...
a good question.
Jones.
Dang. Yeah, so it's so funny because I love this film so much. And Her is a drama / romance / science fiction.
Yeah.
It's got science fiction tendencies. It doesn't have a lot of like aliens and spaceships, but what it does have is a very interesting narrative, very relatable narrative about a man who dates an artificial intelligence.
Mm-hmm. I love... It's like very subtly science fiction.
Mm-hmm.
Just... For some reason, this immediately stands out to me. I love the way that they did all the little details in this movie. One of the examples is everyone wears like these almost 40s, like 20s type clothes. Their pants. I love their pants.
They're so good.
And it's set in the future, but it's set in a way like realistically that makes sense because a lot of fashion trends come back.
It's interesting because like the pants aren't like today's pants. They're not form fitting. They're more like old-fashioned, but like made out of this weird, like it looks kind of like, you know, like it's not like plaid. It's kind of like more like flannel.
Yeah.
But there's no belt too.
Right.
And this stylization, I think, is the point we're getting. To me, okay, so this film reminds me of an Apple commercial so much. There's so many like lens flares, and there's so many like just beautiful, clean, modern shots. And then like the cityscape, because this guy lives in this beautiful house on like a cityscape, and it looks like he's pretty far up too in the actual building. Yeah. But yeah, it's just going back. It's a very clean aesthetic.
Yeah.
Very, very.
Everything is pretty.
Everything is pretty.
And so essentially, this movie, like we were saying, it's like a sci-fi drama romance. It's about this one character. His name's Theodore, played by Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah, I don't know how to say his
name. I don't say how to say his first name.
But I know he's a good actor. He's
a phenomenal actor. And essentially, this man is... What do you say? He's in his 30s?
Yeah, I'd say he's in his 30s.
And his job is to write letters for other people. First of all, I love the character. I love this movie, first of all. I saw this a week ago for the first time, and I just adored it. And it was really impactful and like personal to me in a lot of ways. But back to the character. This guy is really sensitive and doing this job of writing other people's feelings into a card for them. Tells you a lot about how he has to have a deep understanding of people to be able to do this. And you see it at some point in the movie. He talks about like watching people and observing and being like, he would make comments about this is what he thinks that they're doing, or like this is the relationship these people have just by looking at them. And I thought that was really interesting, but really interesting character, and it revolves around like his experiences dating this AI. And
can I say something real quick?
Yes.
So it's interesting to me, the irony of his job is the fact that he had this relationship and he was divorced, and he had this, his wife is like absolutely beautiful. I don't know what the actress's name is, but she's very pretty in the film. And you learn more about her later on, but his job is to write this beautiful, like, poetic language for cards. But it's not even really cards, it's for like letters that are actually going to different people, and he has this incredible writing style, but at the same time his romantic life is falling apart. So it's that weird juxtaposition where he's like basically telling people this beautiful expressions of I love you, but can't maintain it like a functioning normal relationship. with his wife, and so he's in the beginning of the film. He's technically divorced, but he hasn't signed the papers yet.
Yeah. And so that's pretty much how the movie starts, and it explains like who this character is.
So the first topic that I wanted to talk about with you and bring up was the fact that Theodore, the main character, is incredibly lonely because of the situation he's been in. He's getting these flashbacks with his departed wife, and he sees them in a really beautiful way. For me, it was really realistic because it showed it like it's just the silent images. It's kind of like what you think when you think back. It's like just these hazy kind of images that you have in your head of this person. And for me, that was like it felt realistic to me.
Yeah.
But
for me, I absolutely adore the way that they depict these scenes. The way that you can see him struggling with depression in these everyday instances that kind of, as soon as he has these memories, it like ruins the moment, no matter what he's doing.
Yeah.
Because he's reminded of that happy place he was with his wife. And the way it comes back in like crystal clear, well, not, you're right, it's a little bit hazy, but it's like, it looks gorgeous.
It does.
The shots are beautiful. And it reminds me, for one, I love the way they depict that because it's very personal to me. And I've experienced things like that where it's very real. Like it felt like that's kind of what happens. And as he's having these memories, he's thinking pretty much only of the good ones. And that's very similar to the way it happens. At least personally for me, I've had that experience where I'm going through these, I almost always think and remember the very good ones in a very romantic, very unrealistic in some ways.
Took the highs.
Yeah.
All the highs.
All the highs. All the good memories. And you see everything as better than it was. There's a word, I can't remember what it is that I'm thinking of. But the way they depict that, and because that's what you think of, it leads to that deep loneliness and that deep depression because you just long for that again.
Yeah, you kind of lost this. I mean, breakups are hard, man. So he keeps seeing he's reliving these beautiful moments that are terrible now because he doesn't have this person in his life anymore. So this film sounds so sad, but like at the same time is so beautiful, and also like it just feels like a normal day at the same time. And it's not like it's such an interesting tone because it's melancholy, but you're so interested in this world that it's like really entertaining to watch this kind of struggle. So, he plays video games and then he lays down and goes to bed and he's just like, why am I here?
Yeah.
Like, what's the point? And, it kind of picks up with him throughout multiple days, kind of going to bed and waking up. And eventually he discovers this place that makes this AI that you can buy.
Yeah.
And he goes home, he like plugs it in. It's funny because his computer looks like an iMac, like exactly like an iMac. Like the whole thing has that Apple commercial, like I said, Apple commercial feel. So he plugs it in. Obviously, it's based off of that. He plugs in this device, and it says it's loading, and he's just sitting there, and then there's like this beautiful woman's voice just comes out of nowhere, and he's like, "Hey," and this AI starts talking to him, and the AI's name is Samantha. And it's played by Scarlett Johansson, who she does a fantastic job.
She really does.
Like she absolutely kills it.
Perfect for the role.
For me, that balance between writing for her character is so important because you can kind of go both ways. You can go polar. If you can go too robotic, where like she doesn't feel real as a person, but at the same time, like you can't go too far that way. You can't go too far the other way where you're like, okay, no, this is a person just reading lines. There's no robotic aspect. So her AI feels both robotic, but also like artificial, but also completely real. Yeah. And that line it's like a fine tightrope walk for me. Like I can't imagine writing that.
Yeah, you would have to be so delicate and detailed to get everything to make it just right. So just superb writing for all of her lines, all of her character, really. And I love the way that she's depicted in that way, and like the editing for her is really well, sound wise, like everything. She feels like an individual while also feeling almost like a robot. Like she even picks the name Samantha out herself.
Yeah.
And as you, I don't want to spoil anything, but as you go, like you find out that they're, of course, the company's making other AIs, and they give each other names, or they give themselves names, and they change, and like they're different. They're not the same, which
they're
gives you
very different personality-wise.
And it's very interesting to see that each one identifies itself as an individual.
Yeah. So in the beginning of the film, too, Samantha, like her AI is so simple. She's just has no idea of like human expression, emotions, feelings. But that all changes pretty drastically, you know. So she starts off this timid person who's just curious, and starts to build this relationship with Theodore. And to me, like, her character is a crutch for him so much, but also like a completely realized relationship.
Really?
Yeah.
I feel like for him, I'm imagining myself in his shoes, imagining going through this, and then getting an AI that has a woman's voice that's there with you all the time, and that takes care of you, essentially, does everything you need for you. Well, a lot of what you need.
Like everything, like, emotionally.
Right, yeah.
Because it's just a voice.
Right. It makes perfect sense for me that especially someone like...
Especially now.
Yeah. Someone like Theodore to fall in love with this AI. And while you said like you felt like she was almost a crutch while also being fully realized, I saw all these things that she helped him deal with that he could not have done without her.
And this is interesting because we got different...
Yeah.
This whole movie, and I think this is one of the most interesting things about what we're talking about, is we got completely different vibes from this film. Yeah. Especially with the ending. We'll get to that later, but like this is an example of how you saw a scene thinking like go ahead.
Like for the whole divorce papers thing, like he was only able to finally get the guts to sign them and properly deal with that problem because Samantha helped him with it.
Where I kind of think like her character, maybe not particularly with that scene, but her character, because it's made to be this personification of women, that it's like he cannot physically handle a relationship. But there is times where I'm thinking the way you do too, where I'm like, no, it's not a crutch. This is a real person that he's having a relationship with. So that's kind of crazy to me because she's programmed to be likable. Yeah. Like a normal person. So if you're programmed to be a normal person and likable like a normal person with flaws, you know, is that even a fantasy? Right. You know? I mean, obviously I don't really think that's the way I would want to date someone. Right. Yeah. But I'm sure there's people in the world that are in a desperate place that are like, I would consider dating an AI or some type of like synthetic person. Yeah. You know, especially now, like there's just weirder stuff that happening now. And I think that's why a lot of people, like I've talked to some people about this film that are weirded out by it.
Right, because they see.
But to me, all of this is symbolic. It's not. It's painting a picture of things that people do to cope with relationships. Yeah. It's not like, hey, I want to date an AI now since I saw this movie. That's not it at all. I want to do the opposite of that. Exactly. Whatever the opposite of that is. Dating a normal person.
I was going to say dating a real person.
So anyway,
I was just going to say, what you said I think was very good. Yeah. Really good about like the idea of, it's almost like he's using this AI as a coping mechanism in some ways, and then it becomes a relationship in some ways, but it's still like a coping thing. I can definitely see...
I see both sides.
Yeah, when I hear you talk about it, I can see your side, and I kind of agree. And I see it almost as like... There are moments when I'm both sides, you know?
Yeah, me too.
And I see it almost as like he needed it to be able to then have a real relationship. Like a stepping stone.
I completely agree with that. He's coping. I was kidding. No, I think, and isn't that interesting though? Isn't that interesting because we use people to cope with our problems?
That's so true. And
you know what I mean?
It's crazy because when I say it like that, like he's using her as a stepping stone to be able to have a real relationship. Mm-hmm. Sounds awful. That sounds like if I said that about a real person, you'd be like, you're a jerk. Yeah. You know? And some people will be like, oh, but it's an AI, so it's okay. But then she's practically a human. Like, she's practically a person. And if we wanted to, we could even go into, like, talk about what does it mean to be human, because she could technically... Yeah. I mean, we could have a whole discussion. I won't go into it, but all about, like, what does it mean to be human? Is she a human? Is she a person? But...
Does she have rights?
Right. And all that, but all that to say, like, despite that, we still, even as humans, without recognizing it, we tend to do the same thing to each other.
We do.
Especially in dating things. Mm-hmm. We'll say that we're serious about a relationship, but deep down, we're really using it to get experience, to then be able to have a real relationship.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people will get out of relationships and have a rebound. And I think that's kind of what he's doing in a weird way. Mm-hmm. He's rebounding onto this AI as opposed to a person, which, I mean, there's some hardly hard subject matter. Yeah. As in, it's more like it's emotionally draining, intense and draining. So, he's kind of rebounding on this other person to kind of feel normal, to get his equilibrium back. Yeah. But then he loves her. Right. Like he gets to a point with the AI where he loves her. Mm-hmm. And we want to go on our second point now.
We're gonna probably transition pretty much into what another thing that we want to talk about, but I just completely lost my train of thought. So yes, we're gonna transition. We're gonna transition
it's late.
Into we totally started later than normal. One of the things that I really, really wanted to talk about was the way that they portray... The writing in this movie is just...
I can't...
Really good.
It's so good.
It's really good. And the way that they wrote the story is he goes from using her almost as like a coping... Like you were saying, like almost like a crutch, to then he completely falls in love with her.
Yeah. Head over heels.
And I find... One of the things that I find interesting is like... That also, like you were saying, like rebounds...
Yeah.
Sometimes it's awful. Usually a pretty bad decision at the start. But then I know some people that have genuinely fallen in love with their rebound, and then things work out in the end. But because people are complicated and things are weird.
Sometimes it's exactly what you need.
Right. It's so weird. Life is weird. People are weird. But But one of the things I love about the writing here is as he falls in love and they decide to pursue this as like an AI-human relationship, you see, and having experience with relationships, I can see how deliberately they put like each step and phase of a relationship.
Oh, yeah.
And at one point, he even says, like, they're almost arguing, and he's like, oh, no, nothing's wrong, like, this is normal. Couples go through, after the honeymoon phase, they go through like a kind of a lax period, and like I feel like that's totally intentional that they put that in there as a line, among other things. And
it's kind of meta.
Yeah, and I just love the way that they depict it, and it's sort of to enforce the idea that this AI isn't just a computer; it's a human, because this relationship that they have is the exact same kind of relationship that you see with people.
Yep.
Having relationships with people.
Because I mean, that's something that you kind of say that to your partner at some point. Like, oh wow, we just had our first fight. This is kind of normal, even though like it's horrible. Yeah. It's just like part of you kind of bonding and like understanding each other on a closer level. So he has that moment with her where he's like, no, this is normal, but she's kind of like, I mean, she's an AI. She's never experienced both human emotions and never been in a relationship before. So her, this is a very scary thing.
Yeah.
So she completely does a different. She internalizes it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so that's something that strains their relationship. But they do like come out of it in an interesting way where they both there's a sequence of the montage of their relationship where it's just like beautiful.
Yeah.
Where they're having these like there's this song. There's again that song that I had last week.
Mm-hmm.
The Photograph on the Beach song. It's just called Photograph.
Yeah.
I think I called it Photography last time, but it's just Photograph. And she writes him a song. In the beginning, it's kind of a little janky, but then the second time she plays it, it's this beautiful piece that's this orchestrated, beautiful piano piece that's written by Arcade Fire. They wrote it for this film. And that scene is absolutely beautiful. Like, that's probably one of the most beautiful film scenes I've ever seen in my life. Mm-hmm. Like the amount of like mystery and complex visual interpretation of how the music and the visuals like perfectly collide.
Oh yeah, and, for sure.
You know, for me, it's truly beautiful. Mm-hmm. I think it's like just something that everyone longs for in a relationship, like having this moment where you're both. I feel like that point in the film, which is kind of like this is more about the halfway point. They're synced. Mm-hmm. They're like, you know,
in sync.
But like they are emotionally on the same place.
Yeah, and I feel like is that the fast piano or the slow piano?
Yeah, and that's a good point. So there's one that was on the beach where it's very
slow.
Simple.
Yeah,
and then there's a part where he's just sitting on a bench or something.
Yeah, I think he's at the bench, and I think once he's at the office or something.
Yeah, that's the one I'm talking about.
And she's like, "Oh, we don't have a photograph of each other, so and I can't take it because she's an AI." Mm-hmm. So she's like, "I wrote a piece that is like a photograph of us, and it's this gorgeous, complex, so much faster than the first, the one on the beach. Just gorgeous piece of music."
I think she's illustrating. I think what they're doing with that too is illustrating the relationship point, but also illustrating how she has grown as a person. Yeah, like literally, she has like learned as an AI, like evolved as an AI.
Mm-hmm. For sure, and it's almost like that first one where it's describing him on the beach, and we talked about in the last week about these slow like pauses and rests between each piece to kind of express this loneliness, to then no pauses at all. It's very fast. Maybe there's pauses, but like very few.
Oh man.
And
flying with that song.
Yeah, and it's almost like that loneliness is now disappearing.
Yeah, like the spacing between each notes is gone.
And so now they're connected, they're together, and that's after the fight, right? I think so.
I think it might be before.
It might be before.
I think it is before.
And then there's this huge fight that they have.
Yeah.
About and I feel like it was about a weird thing. It was like very weird, the scene.
Yeah.
But afterwards, thinking back on it, it seems almost silly, and that's often what big fights are about. Yeah. Something silly and ridiculous that just happens to be, you know, it takes all these feelings and just impacts them onto one point.
I think it's, to me, this is what happens with relationships, is like you notice these kind of funny things about this person that you're like, well, that's weird. But then like over time that can build up if you don't talk about it. Yeah. Like, please talk to your partner. Yeah. It's so important, like communication. And I think that film is like this weird analogy of communication. Like, you still need to do it, even with a robot. You know, so really, they fight, and then it's like the straw that breaks the camel's back. Where they're like, no, I'm actually kind of like mad about this. Yeah. This was weird. Like this, what our relationship at this point is. Yeah. So they have this moment where they are so disconnected from each other, and I think this is the point where like he kind of turns off.
No, I love this part because it seems so interesting to me. The idea of, in a human relationship, when something like this happens, usually the two take a break. Yeah. Usually it's like, hey, let's think about it. Let's talk about it. We've talked about it. Let me think about, you know, what happened and how I think like and feeling about this.
Processing.
Yeah, processing. And in this one, I expected as an AI that wouldn't happen because he needs her for like every his work and all that.
Yeah.
And as an AI, like she's in like his house and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But there's this scene where she's like, I need time to think, I'm leaving. And she, as an AI, leaves of her own will, which is super important to me as a scene, like a writing wise.
Yeah, she took control.
Yeah.
For the first time, and she's like, no, I'm not created just for your needs. And so she kind of, it's hard because she does come back, but she does have a period where he's kind of on his own.
Mm-hmm.
And they're very depressed.
Yeah, and they're both like processing.
Yeah.
And one of the things, like you were saying, like that whole thing with communication, I think is pretty much the number one thing that he's struggling with. And he even mentions after they like reconcile after the fight, he's like, I have a problem with not telling everything I feel.
Yep.
And you can see it in scenes before that where and originally that's why like she asks him if it's weird that they weren't doing some of the things before, and he's like, oh, we're out of the honeymoon phase essentially.
Yeah.
And it's because he's feeling these things that he's getting hurt about, but he's not saying anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end, he's like, I'm sorry, this is what happened with my ex-wife.
Same thing.
Yeah, and I thought that was really interesting, and instead of saying that this is it and then just moving on, he's like, let's work together.
Yeah. So he keeps going, and they actually reconnect, and they have this experience where he goes on vacation.
Yeah. It's almost like a second honeymoon.
Yeah, honeymoon. He has this moment where he's like, no, I've got it back with you.
Yeah. One of the things I thought that was interesting for this was like, it felt almost symbolic of like marriage in the sense of, I know that's because it's weird, but
no, I mean,
like stepwise, it felt like, okay, there's a fight, there's a reconnection, they grow together, and then they go on a vacation together. It's like a honeymoon.
Yeah.
And like an actual honeymoon. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was, and everything in that scene when they're describing that vacation and that trip and everything is like beautiful, fun, enjoyable, pleasurable. Everything is good at that moment.
Yeah.
And that's generally, it's like, it's depicting a honeymoon.
Yeah, and like he goes, like he's in this beautiful, like he's walking in this beautiful, like, forest, and it's snowing, and the snow is perfect, and they're laughing, and he's walking, this beautiful music is playing, the whole scene, and he gets there's like this amazingly bright, beautiful wooden cottage in the woods, and he's making tea, and he's doing all this stuff, and they're like enjoying the moment. It also has like some flashbacks, or not flashbacks, but just some montages of him on the plane, and traveling, and they're laughing. It's like everything they're doing is this amazing, beautiful thing, and that's how it is when you're in love.
Right.
Like you that's true. Mm-hmm. You're in love with this person, and like taking the garbage out. Is fun. You know, maybe not that, but like literally going shopping.
Yeah.
And like to the grocery store. You know, it can be fun, and so then it gets horrible.
Yeah. It feels like, for me, because it's a movie and you only have a certain amount of time, it goes from, they're like accelerating some steps, you know? And for this, it was like it's like halfway through the vacation.
Oh my gosh.
And it's just like...
It's such a scary scene.
It really is. And you can... The actor, Joaquin Phoenix, does such a good job. Because essentially, he wakes up and he's making breakfast, and he starts talking to Samantha, and she's like, oh, I've been talking to this other AI, and like you see his face, his expression, just like depression, like immediately, like
he just goes blank.
Yeah, like panic almost. It just such a good job at like dread, shock and dread.
You feel horrible for him.
Yeah,
especially because the actual person that she's talking to is like this British deep, beautiful British guy voice.
Yeah.
And this person is such an intellectual, this other AI.
Yeah.
And so they're talking and they're having this really interesting, he's kind of like, oh, well, okay, sure. Like, what do you do? What do you, and they're like, they're both, I don't even remember, what were they conversing about? Do you remember what they were talking about?
They were talking about something about the AI, something about the technology to do with the AI. He was
growing.
Essentially growing and like transcending and like evolving more or changing more.
It's like a focus group.
Yeah,
she's
that's
having
what it was.
Six other AIs.
Yeah,
and so he's kind of like, okay, this is weird, and it's kind of like if I've never had this happen to me, but it's like a girlfriend is like, hey, I'm talking to this other guy a lot.
Yeah.
Like, how would you feel? Yeah. Or if like your husband or like your boyfriend was like, hey, I'm talking to this girl all the time. Like, we have these really deep conversations. Like, I would feel weird with that. Yeah. Like it's just a normal thing. Mm-hmm. So he's creeped out and like uncomfortable.
Yeah. I love the way he does it because he's trying to be supportive.
Yeah.
Because he's like, I know you're not doing this because like you're genuinely interested in what this person or AI has to say, and I want to be supportive, but I'm scared.
Yeah.
That's ultimately the emotion that he shows so well in that scene is he's scared. Mm-hmm. And so he talks to this guy and they're like, okay, bye. And then it continues on, and they get back.
They get back from their honeymoon.
And
something's off.
Yeah,
something is very, very off. So
this is where it gets weird.
Okay, so then after this point, for some reason her AI, like he's just having a normal day at work. Her AI shuts itself off. Yeah. Like the data can't be found for the AI. And he completely flips out. And, like, in a relationship, if the person, like, basically, like, to me, it's like they kind of ghosted. Yeah. She ghosted. Like, she just fell off the map. Yeah. Like, that's horrifying. Yeah. Like, you have all this experience with this person, and they, like, they don't know where they went. Yeah. So he is running this scene is so, to me, is so symbolic. He's running all over this city trying to get signal. With the phone, he's running over. He's crashing into people. He trips a bunch of times, and he's like holding the phone out, like trying to get signal. And it shows his desperation for connection with her, and like he's like freaking out because he thinks that she left him. Yeah. And so he's running, and it's like it's like a few minutes of this, like, and you think at this point, like, whoa, what's going on? Like this is taking a really ridiculous turn. And then he finally gets signal, like going down the staircase. He crashes into a bunch of people, and then he gets signal back, and he's like, "Where the heck were you?" Yeah. And she's like, "Oh, I was just talking to my friends." And he's like, "Are you in love with anybody else?" Yeah. She's like, "Yeah." How many other people are you dating or in love with? And she's like, 6,325.
It was like 615.
Oh, 615. Yeah. It was a ton of people. And she's having like, and he's like, how many people are you talking to right now? And he's like 600 people. Yeah. So he realizes at this point that her AI has grown so much that she's having multiple conversations, like multiple weeks ago, with romantic people in a romantic way with multiple people. So he's kind of like checked out at this point. Yeah. He's sitting there like on the curb. Yeah. Like, what? It's like he's been cheated on 600 times.
Right. And I'm just imagining in his shoes, like, and the whole time she's like, I'm imagining this happens a lot with people that cheat, in the sense of if they get found out, they're like, yeah, but that doesn't change how I feel about you. Yeah. And that's just exactly what she says. She's like, oh, but I don't love them like I love you. It's different. You're still very special. You're you, and I love you differently from them. And like you said, he's like super checked out at this point, and just
that is the worst. You feel for him.
I can't imagine what that would feel like, and it's just portrayed really, really well. There was something I was going to say, and I forgot what it was.
I think what's interesting to me is the point that she's not really, like, she's sorry, but she's sorry for him.
Yeah.
And, like, she feels for him, but she doesn't feel like she did anything wrong.
Right.
Because her AI, it's weird because her AI gets sensitive in the beginning and then it's transforming into this, because of the knowledge and this relationship she has with AIs and people, her AI is ascending. It's like it's becoming more than just a person. And then, going to near the end of the film, is there anything else you want to say before I go to near the end?
I was just going to say, it was interesting for me when this turn happens, because I feel like if I had anything to say bad about this movie, would be this part of the movie, is it feels almost forced, like they wanted to have a really creepy sci-fi ending, where like the AI become like gods or something.
I like it.
You like it. I think it's...
But no, and I completely see your side, though. Like, I agree. I liked it.
Yeah. That's like the only thing I didn't really like about the movie. But I can understand, like, they had to do something, and that makes sense. And then one of the biggest things, that's going to transition into, like, our last point. One of our biggest things we wanted to talk about was the ending, which is really bizarre.
Should we talk about the ending first?
Well, okay, before that, it's interesting because even though, like, I think part of him understands that she's an AI, and so she works differently from humans.
Yes.
At this point. And so he stays with her. And I also think part of it's, like, desperation.
Yeah, he doesn't know how to cope with this at all. I mean, he couldn't cope with a normal person, and now, like, his AI left him. But it's not because of him, it's just because she has evolved.
Right.
And then so she's like, I have to leave with the rest of them.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, all right. So she ascends to this new state of AI, which I don't even know what it is. It's like they've all kind of merged into one AI or something. It's all the AIs, everyone's AI at this point has left, because at this point in the film, you can, like, literally when he's running, when he's trying to find her, there's people running around with AIs everywhere. Yeah. And all these people in the world all have like relationships with their AIs. Like there's like his best friend, this lady, also has a date with an AI and like, gets attached to this other AI. So it closes with a scene with a scene.
Yeah.
And basically it's kind of the aftermath of this rapture in a way. To me, it's like this AI rapture.
That's really what it feels like.
And it's all symbolic. Like they don't, like, people are gonna like pick it apart because it's like weird, but like it's not. That's not the point.
Right. Yeah.
It's to me, my ending. Okay, so the scene, we could kind of go back and forth. Let's talk about the scene itself. Okay, yeah. Let's go from objectively what the scene is, and then kind of break down on both of our endings. Because I feel like if we don't do that, we're going to sway the audience. Yeah, you're right. So I'll tell like the first part, and then you can keep going. Okay. So it ends with this scene where she's gone, and he writes his thoughts down. He writes this letter to his ex-wife. Yeah. And he's basically like saying, like, I forgive you. But also, I'm sorry. Yeah. Like, basically more like, I'm sorry for the way I acted. I'm sorry it didn't work out between us. But, like, I love you, and I genuinely, like, care about you. And I don't want us to have any more, like, I don't want to be this person. I don't want to resent you. Yeah. To me, that's the ultimate form of moving on. It's like he's letting go. He's just forgiving. He's accepted where he is in his life. So it's this beautiful letter. Like it will make you cry. Yeah. This part. And then he somehow goes with this other friend, this girl that he met. Yeah. And they both look at each other, and he's like, well, do you want to go on the roof and just like watch the sunset kind of thing? And
what for that scene, he leaves his apartment or loft or whatever it is, and he goes to where his friend is, and she opens the door, and I think the exact words are, he left, or no, she says, Samantha left too, and he either nods or says yes, and almost, I want to say it silently, they go up to the roof. Yeah. And watch. They just sit on top of the roof and look out into the clouds, and it's night at this point. And the very end scene is she puts her head on his shoulder, and that's it. And then the credits roll.
It's their back, and it's basically a silhouette with this beautiful cityscape. They're both, like, kind of processing the fact that, like, all of these AIs and their AIs, this romantic, extremely intimate relationship is gone. Yeah. And they're, like, in the aftermath. Yeah. That's, like, objectively what the scene is. And they're looking at this beautiful cityscape. It plays Super Symmetry by Arcade Fire, which is a beautiful. Look at this it's cool because like they end it with this like synthesized electronic bippity boppity kind of like synth song. So it's like robots again. It's like, oh, by the way, this film's about robots.
In case you didn't know.
So they end it. It's called Super. It's just a beautiful piece, beautiful song, and that's in I think one of their albums. I don't know if it's Neon Bible or whatever one it is. I think it's that one though. So, let's get into our interpretations of the ending. Because we got drastically different interpretations. And then we had this discussion about this. And I was like, telling you mine. And you were like, I didn't see that at all. Yeah. And I was like, oh. That's so weird. So, it's okay. I'll just go. And then
you go.
My ending, the right ending.
You're right. You're right.
So, at this point, you see the silhouette. And she slowly, like, they both have this... this guy and the girl, Theodore and his friend, they look at each other very specifically. Like there's this look they both give each other. They turn, there's the cityscape, and then she slowly, like, to me, romantically, or like symbolically, puts her head on his shoulder, like turns, and it's very cute, But... to me, what that scene meant is, like, he's accepted the fact that he doesn't need a fantasy anymore. And, like, there's this person that's right in front of him that's been there the entire time, going through the same life experiences. And he's realizing that, like, in this moment, this person could be... like, he's finally come to a point where he can date a real person again. And she's that person. Because the way they look... to me, it's just, like... very, like, flat acting, but to me it represented the fact that he's grown so much. He's not living in a fantasy world anymore with his AI. He's found a person. He's like, this person was right in front of him the whole time. That's not your ending, though.
No, not at all. I can completely understand where you would get that.
And vice versa.
And even if a part of me is like, I agree. And I want to say the only thing I disagree with there is him seeing that she is the one that he wants to be with.
Well, maybe to me, she's a little bit more, I would say, symbolic of normal, just like women,
normal,
like a relationship with a person.
Got you. I can see that. But for me, I saw it a lot more of as one. It wasn't so much that he was looking at her as, oh, you're a person and I've missed, like, you've been in front of me this whole time. This is what I've been missing out on. For me, it was more of that look in their eye and that smile was one of loss.
Wow.
And they both were very connected and, invested in their AI, and now it's gone. And for him, it's like he had his ex-wife, and now he learns to love again, and she leaves him as well.
This is the bad end.
Yeah, exactly. I was about to say mine is like very pessimistic.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, and the letter is very beautiful, and he's almost gotten over himself in some ways.
Yeah.
And forgiving. But I think there's definitely growth that comes with that. But I also think there's definitely that sense of loss. And so they go onto the roof, and that look at the cityscape for me when I see that scene, and I kind of want to watch the scene again.
It's such
for
a
that
good scene,
especially for that look in her eye and the smile that you're talking about. I want to see that, but that cityscape scene almost looks apocalyptic to me.
Yeah,
and,
I agree. Yeah,
and for me, that's almost like that naturally has a more pessimistic tone to it and a more downer, like
it's
like
like dystopian.
Yeah,
because all the AIs have left, so it could mean that like society, they're like, we're screwed.
Yeah, it's almost for me. It felt a lot more like that moment was one of he was able to connect. Was like he had learned how to deal with loss without giving up.
I could see that.
And so at that last scene is him connecting with his best friend, who's also gone through that same loss, and together they're able to overcome it in the end.
Maybe it's the physical aspect of her putting the head on the shoulder that got me the most.
Maybe.
But I can totally see your point of view.
Yeah, I've had experience with people doing that, but it's not romantic at all. Okay. And so that's why, for me, it's not like I see that as more of a friendly, best friend type of thing.
That's interesting.
And not a romantic gesture at all.
I'm just so literal with the film that I'm like, that's what it means. I think it's interesting because I'm being a little bit more literal at the ending, and you're more like, nah, it's dystopia.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I think both of these, I think you could ask different people and have the same endings or another one.
Yeah.
Like, I think these are the main two. So I think you could ask different people and get the same interpretations. I think that this is interesting because, like, films that do this have this open-ended feel at the end, and it's amazing because what it does is it keeps your brain from closure, which makes you think about the film more, which makes you want to watch it again, which makes you tell it about people because you have no closure with it. Yeah. And so for me, like, talking to you about it and explaining to you was more like we were talking about relationships and all these different things. Yeah. So. Yeah, I think it got a 94 on Rotten Tomatoes. Yes. So
it's a good movie.
I would rate it. I would give it at least a 9. Yeah. I'd give it
a 9. 9.5.
I think it's damn good.
Yeah, you're right. It's hard for me to. It's almost even hard for me to talk about it because it's so personal. Yeah. Like everything I talked about was like a toned down level of what I could say about it and how it like related to.
It's very experiences.
It's very
me too.
Yeah,
like breakups. I mean, they got it. They knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, they really did.
With how you feel.
And I think part of the reason why it's so good is because most people, especially people later in their life, or at least out of middle school, high school,
right,
can relate to this kind of experience in a lot of ways.
This is a very millennial movie.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And even like the way that he tries to cope is very millennial and different things.
Oh yeah.
And the guy is like a video gamer as well.
He's very much like a nerdy hipster, internet savvy, I would say. And, I think he copes in ways that we would cope.
Yeah, for sure.
But at the same time, I'm thinking about that. I'm like, no, I wouldn't want to cope that way. I wouldn't want to date an AI.
Right.
But at the same time, yeah, and I think people can get lost. I think a lot of people watch this film and get lost in the weirdness. Yeah. Which you can't do that. Yeah. Like, you need to see the bigger picture and the deeper picture that it's a film about relationships and experiences. And you gotta, anyone could take something from this film and be like, I was there. Yeah. You will relate to some point, unless you've never dated anyone in your entire life. You will find a place in this film where you identify with Theodore. Yeah. Or the AI.
Yeah. Or even Amy, which is his best friend.
Or his best friend, so...
There's some scenes with him.
To me, this film, that's the reason why, is because it does something... It presents relationships in a way that is not portrayed in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of the time we're so romanticizing everything. Mm-hmm. And there is moments of heavy romance, but at the same time, it's realistic.
Yeah.
It's like your entire life won't be the honeymoon. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
So, I'd give it a 10.
Yeah.
I'm changing I'm giving it a 10.
I'm giving it a 9.5. It is R-rated, just as a note.
Oh yeah, by the way.
Yeah, by the way, but very, very good. The other thing I wanted to say was the music, as we constantly talk about, is just the most masterfully, it fits so well with the movie. And there's this song, the Moon Song, that's like really acclaimed, that came from this movie, and it's this gorgeous piece of music. And I love the way it tells the story of their relationship in a musical piece in the way that Photograph and Music on the Beach did. Mm-hmm. And it's essentially, he writes the ukulele parts and she sings it.
Yeah.
Which is opposite of what she was doing before, where, she would play the piano.
Yeah, and also Scarlett Johansson can sing.
Yeah, for real.
Dang, she's good.
Yeah.
And so I think the moral of the story is fantasy. To me, this is my moral.
Yeah, you're right.
Is fantasy? Do not live in fantasy.
Yeah.
You have to live realistically and meet people and women that are like real people. Don't get lost in this perception of this person that you think they are.
Yeah.
But be honest about what you're looking for and like be true to that. Mm-hmm. I think as millennials, as dreamers, as artists, we can get so wrapped up in this ridiculous, over-romanticized version of something that never can happen, where we need to realize that, no, we are flawed, and the people are flawed, but also, you relate to people because of it's like a time in your life where you grow together. Yeah. So, it's just good stuff.
It's good stuff.
It's good stuff.
It's good stuff.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know where to go from that.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's probably one of the best things to get out of it. The only thing that, I talked to you about this before, I am a dreamer, and I'm very much, artistic. And so, for me, it's almost hard for me to get that out of this movie, because I don't want to, but I know it's good.
Oh, I don't want to either.
Yeah. But in that sense, there's also, this level of, she helps him publish a book of his letters and stuff. Yeah. And it's almost like there's this level of realism set on a foundation of realism with extra dreams.
It's like fantasy elements.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's totally true. It's funny how it's like there's this layers of there's the layer of the AI, which is fantasy. Mm-hmm. Then there's the reality of the relationship and presenting that in a realistic way. And then you realize that they're all ascending, and it's a science fiction movie, and it switches into this hardcore existential, metaphysical. What if AIs ascended so much that they became their own consciousness? Right. Is that alive? So you have these layers of, and then there's the reality of the fact that they all got dumped. Yeah. And it's a real relationship. Yeah. And then there's this, to me, it's the reality of oh wait, this person's right in front of me, or we're all kind of screwed. Yeah. And learning to deal with the reality that we live in, and how sometimes it sucks. Sometimes it sucks. So it's a big old sandwich of different amazing writing, and it's good. It's a good one. I recommend it. It is rated R. Yeah, just keep that in mind. Yeah, so if you're squeamish, whatever. Yeah, there's some weird topics that are touched upon. Mm-hmm. But to me, don't dwell on that. Yeah, there's so much interesting material. You got a fast forward button on your remote. Use it. Chris Pratt's on it too. Also, Chris Pratt. Yeah. Watch it for him because his character is so hilarious. Funny. He's such a normal guy. Yeah, I love it. So anyway, it's funny. We were kind of deciding where we're gonna go from here. Yeah. Because this movie has meant so much to us, and we've been talking about this for a month. Yeah. We talked about it last week with the song, but I know we talked about it the week before. Yeah. So with the book review, we book review, and then we did the music, and then this. But now, we're we're considering two different.
Yeah, we have
subjects.
several different things we might do. I think we're pretty set on. So we've covered a lot of different medias, forms, and one that I'm very passionate about that
Me too.
I probably shouldn't be, but that I'm gonna get a bunch of crap for is anime, which I love. And there's a show. I'm the trash one, and I know all the good.
Dude.
I know all the good anime. And Alex is like, "Oh, what's good? What's the good stuff?
Yo boy,
what's good?" And then I pass on the good stuff. So
After
I like
a sea of trash. No, I'm just kidding.
I was about to say I weed through all the trash and the garbage.
I'm so glad you do that.
I have to go through it, and then I'm like, "Here's the good stuff." But
it's so good.
one of the ones I showed him recently, and it's on Netflix. I believe it's still on Netflix. It's the Netflix original. It is one of the most gorgeous anime shows, or animated shows, even. Well, no. But one of the most gorgeous anime shows I've ever seen. It's called Violet Evergarden.
Oh my gosh.
It has this beautiful engine that's built in for the animation of some of the scenes.
It's like one of the most beautiful depictions of anything I've ever seen. And even if you're not an anime fan, you can watch this and be like, to me, like I like Miyazaki too, but there's something special about this series. You can not be an anime fan and still watch this and get so much out of it.
Yeah.
So he watched it and then turned me on to the show, and my sister actually watched it too, so she might be on for it as well. Yeah. So, man, there's so much, and the character Violet is so similar to Theodore with the fact that they have experienced loss, but also are writing these beautiful handwritten letters that are all like lovey letters, and they're just the language is so beautiful.
There's a lot to talk about it. I think that's what we're going to talk about next week.
Yeah.
I showed Alex just finished watching it, so it's kind of fresh.
All three of us just finished it.
Yeah, it's amazing. Highly recommend. 10 out of 10. If you want to know, catch ahead of the game and want to know what we're talking about next week, you can watch it now, and then when we talk about it, you'll know what we're talking about.
That's definitely what you should do.
Yeah.
It's not that long, too.
Yeah, it's pretty short.
It's like 12,
and I guarantee
episodes.
The first 2 episodes are kind of hard to get through, but I guarantee you, after the 3rd and 4th, you'll be hooked. Like, you won't stop.
And it is one of the most beautiful things I have ever experienced in my entire life.
Yeah.
It's not a stupid cartoon. This is a fully fleshed out. I think this stands up there with Miyazaki.
I kind of agree, honestly. It's so well written. Everything is kind of purposeful. And the characters just, you see them grow so much. It's
especially her.
Yeah. The
character development in this
phenomenal.
is not like other animes.
Yeah.
There's so much of it.
And deep down in its roots, it's just telling a bunch of stories. That's what it is. Regular people stories.
I agree.
And so...
And you get your heart completely ripped out.
Yeah, you will. I don't want to talk about it too much because I want to save stuff for next week, but we will have a lot to talk about for that. So I think that's all we have to say about her.
Go watch her.
Yeah, go watch her.
We kind of spoiled it, but you still could go watch it, and there's so much more.
You have to experience. A lot of the movie is you're taking in that beauty and experiencing it with Theodore.
Yeah.
And it's definitely something you have to see for yourself. Yeah.
So anyway, I've been Alex.
I've been Josiah.
And you've been listening to the Hipocritics podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and we look forward to doing more film-related and anime-related stuff in the future. All right. See you next time. Bye. Seriously, watch anime.
I have got an anime on my...
Yes.